Shortly after taking office last year, Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi sparked outrage in China by suggesting that a Chinese blockade of Taiwan could trigger a Japanese military response. China responded with a barrage of countermeasures designed to make the Japanese government back down. However, this may have backfired, as Takaichi's government has instead been emboldened to maintain its stronger line on China and bolster the Japanese security capabilities after winning a huge landslide at the Japanese election last week. So in this video, we're going to explore the deteriorating ties between China and Japan and explain why there's a good chance things might get worse. Never miss an episode and always feel in the loop by subscribing and ringing the bell. Ties between Japan and China have oscillated over the decades between periods of friendship and hostility. Sanae Takaichi's predecessor as Japanese Prime Minister, Shigeru Ishiba, set out to improve the relationship between the two countries, increasing diplomatic engagement and exchanges. But relations nosedived after Takaichi, who is seen as a security hawk and a staunch conservative from the more nationalist wing of the LDP, became Japanese Prime Minister in October 2025. During a parliamentary meeting in early November, Takaichi said that a hypothetical Chinese attack on, or blockade of, Taiwan could constitute a survival-threatening situation. This is a legal term in Japan's security law that enables the country to take military action in collective self-defense with countries that have a closer relationship with Japan. Naturally, this sparked an angry response from China, whose foreign ministry described Takaichi's comments as egregious and a gross interference in China's internal affairs. The Chinese government subsequently launched a wave of reprisals. It restricted imports of Japanese seafood, discouraged tourism to Japan, which almost halved the number of Chinese visitors in December. It signalled it could limit the export of critical minerals to Japan, wrote a formal letter to the UN accusing Japan of aggression, and in January banned exports to Japan of dual-use goods that could be used for military purposes. While Takaichi had suggested that her comments were somewhat off the cuff, making her the first Japanese leader in decades to publicly link a Taiwan crisis with potential Japanese military action, she has rejected China's demand that she retract what she said. This all happened within the first couple of months of Takaichi's premiership, and then in January Takaichi called a snap general election for February 8th. You may well have seen our video on the election results. The link is in the description if you haven't, but as a reminder, Takaichi's Liberal Democratic Party, or LDP, won in a landslide, not just securing a majority, but a two-thirds supermajority. This was an astonishing result, as it dramatically reversed the last few years of LDP decline, and delivered a strong personal mandate to Takaichi. While much of the campaign had an economic and cost of living focus, the outcome, that of an emboldened and politically powerful Takaichi, has the potential to significantly impact China-Japan relations. Takaichi said the election involved major policy shifts, not just in economic and fiscal policy, but also on strengthening security policy, adding that we truly must tackle these issues with all our strength. Even before the election, Takaichi's cabinet had approved a record 9 trillion yen, or $58 billion defense budget, as part of plans to reach a defense spending target of 2% of GDP 2 years ahead of schedule. Japan's increasingly muscular defense build-up over the past few years is a response to the changing geopolitical order. Not just as Japan views the likes of China and North Korea as growing threats, but also as the United States, under Trump, pushes its allies in the region to shoulder more of the security burden. By winning a two-thirds supermajority, Takaichi's government also now has the numbers required to begin a parliamentary debate on revising Japan's pacifist post-war constitution, specifically Article 9, which Takaichi wants to amend in order to explicitly recognise the self-defense forces, Japan's de facto military. Now, amending the constitution would also require two-thirds support in the upper house, where the government does not have a supermajority or even a majority, and then would need endorsing by voters in a referendum, so it's unlikely to happen anytime soon. However, the act of starting the debate alone would antagonise China, which would see it as evidence of a militarising Japan turning away from its post-war pacifism. Another point of tension, and one that has often proved to be so in the past, is the Yasukuni Shrine. The shrine in Tokyo honours millions of Japan's war dead across several conflicts, including more than 1,000 convicted war criminals and around a dozen Class A war criminals from the Second World War. As such, in countries that suffered at the hands of the Japanese Empire, like China and South Korea, the Yasukuni Shrine is seen as a symbol of Japan's past aggression and militarism, so prime ministerial visits to the shrine often spark diplomatic backlash. No Japanese Prime Minister since Shinzo Abe in 2013 has visited the shrine, but Takaichi, a protege of Abe's, has signalled that she wants to lay the diplomatic groundwork for such a visit. So, it's with all this in mind that China might be unnerved by the scale of Takaichi's victory at the election. After all, it suggests that there are electoral benefits in Japan to taking a tough line on China, and that perhaps China's measures against Japan in response to Takaichi's Taiwan comments actually ended up backfiring and giving her a stronger mandate. So, it's hard to see Takaichi changing course on China. That being said, it seems unlikely that she will try to further antagonise China, given the close economic ties between the two countries. Instead, Takaichi's priority will be to shore up American support. She has a good relationship with US President Donald Trump, who gave her his complete and total endorsement ahead of the election. However, it was reported that Japanese officials were frustrated at the Trump administration's relatively muted support for Japan following the outbreak of tensions with China. Takaichi is set to visit Washington, D.C. to meet with Trump in March for talks on finalising the first round of Japanese investment projects in the US as part of the US-Japan trade deal. That meeting will be her opportunity to talk face-to-face with Trump before he then goes to Beijing in April to meet Xi Jinping in what will be the first visit of a US president to China in nearly a decade. Trump will be seeking to preserve the fragile US-China trade truce, and Takaichi may worry that Trump's desire for deal-making with China could leave Japan out in the cold. For China, given that these renewed tensions are based on such a central issue as Taiwan, it seems unlikely that the Chinese government will back down on its own. However, it will have to face the reality that Takaichi looks unlikely to be one of Japan's recent revolving door prime ministers, and may well be around for some time. As is so often the case these days, a lot of how this plays out depends on influence. Not only who technically has the power to make things happen, but also who has the sway to make sure it does. That's why last year we put together a list of the world's 25 most influential people, using rankings from you, our audience, as well as from our journalists. This year we've done the same, producing a brand new ranking for 2026. In the upcoming issue of our magazine Too Long, we explore our list, telling the stories of a number of people who made the list, from the return of Donald Trump and the calculated moves of Xi Jinping to the AI frontiers of Sam Altman. We look to the new entries, New York's first Muslim mayor Zohran Mamdani, the radical shift of Pope Leo XIV, and bastions of technocracy like Prime Minister Mark Carney, as well as the shadows that still linger like Jeffrey Epstein. As always, this issue of Too Long features a whole lot more than just our most influential people ranking though. We also have a whole featured segment on how the UK became more divided than ever, and how a broken country could rebuild, the fragmentation emerging within the EU, how religion is being used by politicians around the world, and much, much more. You can pre-order your copy at toolong.news, or to get the best deal, you can just subscribe to the magazine. Doing so gets you 20% off every copy for the lifetime of your subscription, and if you use code SPRING26, you'll get an additional £3 off your first copy, bringing the price as low as £4.99. Find out more and order your copy today at toolong.news.